Hi everyone, welcome back to What on Earth, your news in a nutshell. We start off with some interesting news about NATO. The leaders of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization countries gathered in London for a summit to discuss the future of NATO last week. But this summit turned into a high school gossip session as the leaders of France, President Macron, Canada, Prime Minister Trudeau, and the UK, Boris Johnson, were caught on camera taking jabs at President Trump of the USA behind his back. While the actual aim of the summit was forgotten, what we left with as a conclusion was that no one is taking Trump seriously anymore. And despite all of his efforts, it looks like Trump was never able to make it into the cool kids club. Saudi Aramco, the Saudi Arabian oil giant and the world's most profitable company, sold some of its shares in Riyadh this week. The share sale was the biggest to date, $25.6 billion, surpassing that of China's Alibaba, which raised $25 billion in 2014. And Saudi Aramco is now valued at a whopping $1.7 trillion. The question is, what does the Saudi government plan to do with all this money? Buy 8 million Xboxes in a Beverly Hills penthouse? No. Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, intends to use this money to propel his Vision 2030 that aims to reform Saudi Arabia economically and politically and reduce its dependence on oil. For someone who's been the subject of criticism for the killing of journalist Khashoggi and negativity for his country's involvement in the war in Yemen, this loosening of control in a state-owned company and raising fat loads of money seems like the first step to receiving some international goodwill. Staying in the Middle East, Abdel Abdul Mahdi, the Prime Minister of Iraq, has stepped down following large-scale protests concerning poor governance and unemployment. Demonstrators, however, are not satisfied and want other changes to be made too. Angered by the lack of jobs and basic public services, many protesters say corruption is to blame and want a full change in cabinet. Iraqi authorities have killed over 400 people since the unrest began in October. And Iraq's neighbor, Iran, is consumed by protests too. Human rights groups have said that up to 450 Iranians have been killed protesting a rise in the state-controlled price of fuel. The Iranian regime has been accused of hiding the scale of its crackdown by shutting down the internet. This couldn't have come at a worse time. If Hassan Rouhani, the Prime Minister of Iran, had simply glanced at the countless Baby Yoda memes that have been hogging the internet, the cuteness of the green alien would have probably made him regret his decisions. Jokes aside, Iran hasn't seen such deadly unrest since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Elon Musk won a defamation case against British scuba diver Vernon Unsworth. Unsworth sought $190 million from the billionaire CEO of Tesla. Why? Back in June 2018, 12 kids were trapped in a cave in Thailand, and Unsworth, a seasoned diver, hired a group of professionals to rescue the kids. Musk sent over a mini submarine to aid the rescue, but it was never used. Unsworth claimed that it was all a PR stunt and said that Musk should stick the submarine up where the sun don't shine. This triggered Musk, who tweeted out a response that stated that Unsworth was a random pedo guy. Musk told the court he did not expect the pedo tweet to be taken literally, as it was a common phrase used in his home country of South Africa. He said that at the time, he thought Unsworth was just some random creepy guy who was unrelated to the rescue in any way. The jury came to a unanimous decision in less than an hour that Musk was not guilty of anything. There's a darker side to this verdict though, that you can make any accusation that you want to, as vile as it may be and as untrue as it may be, and get away with it. Kamala Harris officially withdrew from the Democratic race for president. She claimed that she couldn't fund her campaign anymore. A year ago, Ms. Harris was seen as a possible frontrunner for the nomination. She was modern, politically driven, and a true representation of America's multicultural society, having Indian and Jamaican parents. She praised law enforcement and criminal justice reform, promised tax cuts as well as Medicare for all and free college, and she took unimpeachable positions in favor of unity, truth, grandmothers, and America. Her downfall most likely came after her presidential debate with Tulsi Gabbard, who tore into Ms. Harris's records as the Californian district attorney. She was accused of withholding evidence from court that could have freed a man from death row. putting 1,500 brown or black people in prison for marijuana possession and laughing about it when she was asked about her own marijuana possession records. On Democratic polls, she had 6% of the support prior to the debate. This statistic dropped to 1% after the debate. Joe Biden said he would consider her as a possible running mate should he win the election. YouTube Rewind 2019. It was a disaster. The disclaimer that popped up at the beginning of the video said that all the users made it what it is, since the video was literally a recap of the most liked music videos, gaming videos, and whatnot. And yet, it still managed to get a record-breaking 4.4 million dislikes. But first, what is Rewind? Every year, YouTube puts together a video that summarizes the most important internet happenings of the year. From new YouTubers to hilarious memes, it's supposed to have everything. After last year's Rewind video, which ironically became the YouTube video with the most dislikes, people asked for a better YouTube Rewind this year. And this year, YouTube put random clips together and called it a day. Slow clap for them. And to round it off, this meme has been circulating around the internet over the last week, and it does have a point. Rather than trying to act visco or being environmentally friendly by fitting into modern trends, there are easier steps that we can take. We don't need to buy and use a metal straw to drink a milkshake or drink Coke through a hollow paper cylinder to prove environmental consciousness. We just don't need to ask for a straw in the first place. Now, on to our main story. Our main story for today is about immigration, and more specifically about ethnic enclaves. Ethnic enclaves are areas within a community which have different national or cultural traditions from the main populace of that society, and this often happens due to immigrants moving into a new country and settling down in areas that they find familiar and comforting. What immediately springs to mind are places like Little Italy in New York, Chinatown in San Francisco, Koreatown in New Jersey, or Little India in Singapore. But there is a darker side to these enclaves too, because not all of them are as well developed as the aforementioned examples. A perfect example of this is Mjolnerparken in Denmark. Often characterized as a ghetto, Mjolnerparken isn't exactly a place of sunshine and rainbows. During Copenhagen's turf wars of 2017, gunfights between rival gangs erupted in the estate, and in one conflict, 2 plainclothes police officers were shot and killed. This event led to the infamous ghetto laws of Denmark, which called for resolutions that were extreme on both ends of the spectrum. Harsher punishments for crimes committed within that area and mandatory daycare for toddlers. And now in 2019, the Danish government is calling for the complete breakup of the Mjolnerparken enclave. It isn't just Denmark. In 2018, the parliamentary leader of the Dutch governing party suggested adopting Danish-style ghetto laws in the Netherlands. The mayor of the Belgian city of Antwerp last year compared the growth of ethnically distinct communities in his city to a form of apartheid. When Emmanuel Macron, the French president, as we were talking about earlier, went on a nationwide listening tour this year in response to the Yellow Vest movements in France, people from poorer suburbs in the nation, whose residents are mostly from ethnic minorities, denounced the area's growing ghettoization. And all of these countries are now looking at the option of breaking up these ethnic enclaves. And they're doing this for 2 main reasons. First, these enclaves are actively harming their residents, and second, they impede on integration of these immigrants. But there are flaws in both of these arguments. First, on how the enclaves are actively harming the residents. The point being made here is that the vast majority of these enclaves are filled to the brim with crime and inequality. And that isn't wrong. Many developing enclaves have high rates of drug trafficking, rape, murder, and homicide, and all of this harms many innocent residents who are caught in the crossfire. Thus, the ideal solution would be to break up these enclaves and force people out in an attempt to reduce their chances of being victim to crime. But there is a flaw here. Forcing out residents from enclaves they've been in their entire lives, where they form bonds, form friendships, and share a deep-rooted sense of communal belonging, can actually do more harm than good, because it makes it harder for them to integrate in new environments. It leads to cultural clashes when residents of ethnic enclaves aren't able to integrate properly and have nobody to turn to because they've lost the community that they've had for such a long time. This could potentially lead to increased crime, both against residents of ethnic enclaves as well as residents of the larger community. And secondly, on how these enclaves impede integration. The point that's being made here is that individuals within these enclaves lock themselves in and refuse to leave, making it very difficult for integration to occur as they choose not to engage and interact with the community outside. But we already discussed how integration is actually worse off when you force these residents out of their comfort zones, out of their homes. So yes, there are problems with these ethnic enclaves, but forcing residents out of the place that they've called home for such a long time isn't the right solution. So you might be wondering, what is? First, natural integration. Yup, it does sound weird because natural stuff never works. All natural body powder doesn't get rid of pimples and all natural food doesn't make you any thinner. Trust me, I speak from experience. So how exactly will all natural integration help? Well, according to The Economist, allowing for these ethnic enclaves to grow and develop over time can lead to positive integration as second and third generation immigrants are able to make the cultural leap even better. Second, and most importantly, government should focus and actively implement better policies in these areas. Rather than simply labeling them as ghettos and ushering people out, governments need to and should focus on improving housing as well as cracking down on crime through less aggressive mechanisms. And lastly, people in these enclaves should be encouraged to take steps and open up to the outside larger community. These ethnic enclaves are booming with culture, and getting people to go in and experience and embrace this culture is very important because it leads to seamless integration. This was exactly the case with the Chungking Mansions in Hong Kong. Chungking Mansions is a melting pot of diversity. Its inhabitants are from all over the world, the most visible being people of Middle Eastern, South Asian, as well as African descent. There's a very negative aura that surrounds the place, and local Hong Kongers are petrified of stepping foot inside the Chungking Mansions. But when residents of the area organized a cultural tour for the entirety of Hong Kong, it was a massive success, with over 1,300 people turning up and experiencing the diversity of what was once deemed the most unsafe place in Hong Kong. That's all for today. But before we finished, I wanted to end the season of What on Earth by giving you guys a little something special. This is Susan. She's the editor here at Young Post in Hong Kong. Susan, with 2019 coming to a close, what's the one topic that you think teenagers should be aware of?
Climate change. Climate change. If you're not aware of it, you must be living under a rock, really. But this is the first time that we've had thousands of scientists around the world come out and say that this is a crisis and it needs every drop of our attention.
So these scientists have actually come up with 6 potential steps that people can take to address the issue, including things like limiting the use of pollutants and completely switching to plant-based diets. Do you think that these solutions can be effective in addressing the issue of the climate crisis?
Of course they can be effective. The real question is whether or not there's going to be the political will to bring them about. And we know already that there isn't, because fossil fuels is one of the biggest issues with climate change, and nobody has switched the lights off yet.
Mm-hmm. So do you think it's possible for us teenagers to take action effectively and try to mitigate the climate crisis as a whole?
Where I look to the future with today's teenagers is that you're really smart. You're a lot smarter than pretty much everybody that came before you. And you've got a lot more resources to come up with workable solutions to the problems that we've had. It might seem like everything is coming to an end and there's huge upheaval, but we've been in this kind of position before and we've always prevailed. So I'm really hoping that young people will be thinking about how to fix this.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to What on Earth. I'll see you on the next season.